Hi, everybody. Welcome to Storm Champ, the podcast that takes a look at everyday acts of resilience and takes a little note from life's lessons along the way. My name is Kim, and tonight talking with Carlos.
Hey, Kim.
And yes, we're going to go ahead and dig into this idea of handling ourselves, dealing with the holidays. Wherever you're at, wherever you're listening to us, you likely are taking a look at your to-do list and maybe those checklists of travel plans or maybe family recipes or trying to figure out how you might ring in the new year in a few weeks. And for a lot of us, our calendars are pretty booked, and there's some things that can get a little out of control very quickly. So, in figuring out what kind of topic to tackle that might connect with you as our listeners, we definitely thought that dealing with the holidays, we could brainstorm, sort of strategy session, talk about some of the things that make the holidays a little heavier than they need to be, and what we do to sort of cope with the stress and drama of it all. So with that, I figure we can go ahead and get into it a little bit here. It's been a moment since we've had multiple folks on the call, and there's several different high holidays is what I like to call it, that are kind of in the queue. So whether it's Thanksgiving or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or Christmas or the New Year or maybe just winter solstice coming around, there's a lot of reason to celebrate. It's supposed to be a good time, right? It's supposed to be something where spirits are high and we get all our razzle dazzle and we start to feel that warm glow of the fire or sip on that spiced wine or that eggnog cheesecake or whatever comes around every once in a while. And we should take some time to celebrate and enjoy some of that. But more times than not, it also includes a heavy dose of stress and a little bit of heavy feelings that maybe we don't really know how to name, and we certainly don't know what to do in the mix with all the other things that are of priority during this time of year. So I was trying to think about, in getting ready for the holiday season, what do I need to do to keep my endurance going? Just in general, it's a busy time of year. I've already been to, let's say, 3 holiday parties. For work and for close friends who I've kind of been the plus one with and all that other stuff. Carlos, what about you? Have you been attending holiday parties?
Yeah, well, for Thanksgiving, right? So Thanksgiving just passed last week, and we definitely, had Thanksgiving dinner at a friend's house, and so kind of dealing with, a little bit of the stress of that and the planning around that, and that we haven't had any of the Christmas parties quite yet, so that's coming up, I think. But yeah, I think as you what's really interesting for me about this year, and maybe we can talk a little bit about it too, because it just kind of dawned on me as you were introing, is do you ever really think about getting ahead of the stress of the holidays, and like what does that even look like? Because I'm thinking back now, like this is going to be the first year that I can say I'm going to be conscious of understanding that there's stress coming or in the middle of it already. And I don't think I've ever really thought about that before. I never thought I was conscious about that before. So is that something you
Sure.
normally think about, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the context of a few things. The first piece of just, oh my gosh, get prepared. It's about to be holiday season. Kind of being the hashtag fat kid that I am, calorie counts are the first thing I think
Right.
about. I'm thinking
Yeah.
about all that super indulgent, rich stuff, all of the wine, all of the cocktails, the sweets in general. I'm like, oh boy, a lot of people they sort of do this yo-yo situation when it comes to got to get ready for spring break or I got to get my beach body ready. And it's a really, I would argue very unhealthy approach to the entire thing. It's sort of the flip and reverse. It's like, oh, I have an excuse now to maybe overindulge a little bit and maybe just not count those 2 extra scoops of macaroni and cheese or
Right.
whatever the situation
Right.
might be. So when I think about stress and what I'm going to have to kind of handle and deal with, the first thing I think about in relation to the holidays is food generally. But then
Right.
also, I think logistics really come into play. I'm a very independent person. I have a family made up of very important people all over the place. It used to just be from one side of the state to the other, but now I'm bopping around to multiple states, different, sorority family, college friends and family, biological family, and so I think logistically, the time it takes to get from place to place to place. And honestly, Carlos, I'm one grown ass person. I'm not dealing with a wife and kids. I'm not
Right.
dealing with in-laws. It's one of those things that when I really think about it, the timing and the logistics of traveling on the roads in the northern Midwest, never mind if I'm going to be taking a plane somewhere and having to deal with O'Hare and airport traffic and all of that business. That's the number two thing I think about as a major stressor of the holidays. It's just logistics.
Right. Right. So let's talk about the first one because I think that's the food part, and I think fitness in general, and especially for those folks that are either struggling with their fitness and they're thinking about like what the holidays is going to do and the stress of that, or even folks that are doing well with their fitness and they don't want to get thrown off by the holidays. So how do you kind of tackle that food fitness stressor?
Sure. Yeah, so food for the majority of the year for me is definitely medicine. I can recognize when I'm feeling great, and it has a direct correlation to the food I'm eating. I'm eating fresh food, I'm eating seasonal food, and I get a lot of joy in sort of shifting what's on my plate and what I'm intaking through the seasons. So I try to apply that same lens around the holidays. I up my intake of cranberries, for example, by like 300% at this time of year.
Right.
I love me anything with cranberries and walnuts right now. That sounds fantastic. Put it on everything. So I try different ways to kind of indulge in the seasonal things that aren't like the worst case scenario. I mean, who doesn't love a brie bake, right? I'm a failing vegetarian at this point, but there's no conscious moment in my life where cheese will not be on my plate.
Right.
So if I'm going to start to identify things that kind of appear on the grocery aisle and likely at holiday parties and things like that during this time of year, I try to sort of identify and prioritize what am I most looking forward to and how do I kind of manage that. On the same note, I've been reading and been trying to like figure out how to just kind of monitor and manage some of those impulse points around food. And the number like one and number two like frenemies of this time of year, absolutely sugar is
Right.
on that, and
Right.
white flour. So all the sugar cookies, all of the breads and all of that kind of stuff. So if I were to identify two of the bad guys that I try to just very consciously skip over on the buffet line, it would be anything super duper high in sugar and anything that's extra processed flours, baked goods and all that other stuff. So if I do that, I've already eliminated a majority of what I tend to overindulge in to begin with. So as much as I love cheese, that white elbow macaroni and cheese is going to have to be something I skip at least one every two, three, four times around, because otherwise I'll be sitting there licking the bottom of the bowl, right? And it's just, I'm going to feel horrible. Not just about how much I've been like gluttonous in the mix, but the way I sleep that night, the way I wake up the next morning and feel groggy, the
Right.
headache I get. So I've already gone through the ups and downs of this experience on a regular week, on a regular month. So I know what to kind of expect during the holidays for that.
How is it any different than any other time of the year in terms of like managing food or fitness for you?
Yeah. I mean, I think we kind of amplify the excuses, right? Oh, we got that new movie. Who hasn't enrolled in Disney Plus? Raise your hand, right?
It's
We
taken
aren't
over my
moving,
life.
right? It's a lot of us. Don't worry. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. So there's a lot more sedentary, let's play Monopoly for 4 hours. Let's, go ahead and indulge in a baby keg of beer since it's the holidays and more people are around instead of maybe just a 6 pack or a 4 pack or whatever it might have been at a normal house party gathering, right? And so it turns out to be so much more quantity and so much less activity. And so for me, I try to like tap into my inner kid as much as possible. I want to get outside and play catch, or I want to go outside. I would love to snowshoe. I'd love to do a little buzzed snowshoeing if at all possible. That would be great.
I want
No,
to
but
see
like,
that. You need to record that.
yeah, maybe I will, because I think as long as you can get to the point of joy and activity, and hell, let's bring the cousins out. Let's get the little kids involved in that stuff. I think that'll kind of lighten the feeling of like, ugh, nobody wants to put extra layers on it. It's cold outside. Nobody wants to stop watching the Star Wars marathon and prep for Rises of Skywalker, right? We all have these things going on. And I feel like it's way too easy to fall into those excuse traps. So if we can find a way to sort of incentivize getting back to basics as our inner kid, and usually kiddos are bouncing off the wall and they want, they want us to be involved with that too. So let's kind of meet in the middle and do that way. Um, Also, I haven't always been, I guess, so much of a gym rat. I've just recently kind of gotten into working out in an actual facility, and I've never really had sort of that snarky approach to, oh, here comes the New Year's resolution crew and all that other
Right.
stuff. But
Right.
um, I think if I can kind of get one step ahead of what is my like routine, how can I shift my routine about a month or so ahead of the new year, it won't feel like such an uphill battle alongside of everyone else trying to accomplish those same goals. So it also gives me kind of a jump start in what I hope to be facing for the first quarter of next year in my fitness regimen, let's say, if I start to practice it now. And so that's sort of something mentally I play with on the fitness side of things, where not only just in my daily activities, I'm being able to play and have fun outside or around the house or in the basement or whatever. But then when I'm actually formally working out and trying to do something regular and routine, like in my fitness, I try to think about being a little bit more disciplined as if December 1 might have been January 1. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So I think you hit it right on the head when you said the word excuses, because it's just like the light bulb went off for me that says you're giving yourself permission to let the excuses win
Mm-hmm.
more often than the discipline, right? I think that's really important to kind of recognize that. It's like we get to this season and we know like there's going to be lots of different kinds of temptation, whether it be food or just, slacking off on fitness or whatever. And you're giving yourself permission. And it's really interesting when you kind of think about it that way. It's like you're still in control. You're still making that conscious choice to do the things that you maybe shouldn't be doing, or maybe doing it in a more of a not a moderated kind of way, but allowing yourself to go a little bit overboard. And then that's where I think people feel like they get off track because they allow themselves to do that. But the reality, and I started thinking about it, because so this, for context, this is going to be the first holiday season ever in my entire life where I'm still conscious about my fitness and eating healthy and all that stuff. But again, I'm in the same boat you are. I'm allowing myself to eat those Christmas cookies, right? I'm allowing myself to have a few more brownies or whatever, or I'm allowing myself to indulge in a couple more alcoholic beverages than I normally would do, because again, it's letting the excuse, win. But I saw something the other day. I think it was on Instagram, where somebody had did the math behind, so between like Thanksgiving and the New Year, how many meals you actually can potentially have if you eat 3 meals a day and all that other stuff, and then how many meals that you can cheat on. Basically, you can cheat at Thanksgiving, you can cheat at Christmas, you can cheat at in New Year's, and you're still, overall, if you still do well in between, those 3 meals won't matter, because it's like 200 other meals that you're gonna have, right? So it's more for like people that feel like, one meal is going to mess them up. It's when you get back to like, oh, you're eating not well at 2 meals a day now, and you're not outside anymore. You're not exercise going to the gym anymore because it's colder outside and you don't want to get up because it's cold.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you start to let those excuses that really that's the thing that actually gets you off track, I think. And then that will cause the stressors to come in, because then all of a sudden it's like, here I am failing again. You're in your head about it. Oh, I'm going to fall off the wagon and all these other things. And then that's when people get caught up in the whole resolution thing, where I'm going to be back in the gym January 1st. And it's like, no, why'd you leave the gym to begin with? In fact, if you would have kept going to the gym during this time period, those cheat meals wouldn't have been as catastrophic, quote unquote, catastrophic to your overall fitness or health or whatever. So it's just funny how we frame it. We always frame it in such a negative way. And if we like, okay, I'm going to allow myself to make some concessions here, because I know overall I'm still going to be in the positive of everything.
Mm-hmm. And also, I think to that point, we've been talking about kind of a big picture around multiple different types of stressors and things like that. I mean, it's a heavy time. The holidays are a heavy time for a lot of people for a lot of reasons, but um, more so than anything, I feel like the physical activity in the mix, especially if it's disciplined and regimented, is going to be the outlet you not only need, but will crave. I mean, some of us just need some downtime when it's not kids running around everywhere, right? And downtime might mean, 3 extra miles on the treadmill, at this gym session. Or maybe we pick up heavy lifting because you want to throw your in laws across the house. Like whatever it is that's going on, there's definitely a way to channel some of what is stressing you out and what is kind of weighing heavy on you in a physical way, I guess, I suppose.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like it's interesting that you bring that up because I'm finding that if I don't go to the gym or if I'm not doing something active that day, I'm off. Like I feel unbalanced because to me, going to the gym now is like the most underrated therapy session out there. Like that's pure therapy for me right now. And
Mhm.
you get in there, you get a good workout in, or even you get in there and you have a shitty workout, but you still moved for 45 minutes to an hour or whatever, however time you use, you're still going to end up feeling overall better because you're going to flush a lot of that stuff out. You're going to take it out. If you're stressed or angry or something, you're going to take it out on the treadmill or the weights or whatever you're doing. And you
Mhm.
actually end up feeling better overall because you went and you got it and you showed up for yourself and you took that time to kind of rebalance yourself a little bit. And it
And
doesn't, we're talking about the gym. It doesn't even have to be the gym. You can yoga, right? It could be taking a walk outside if you can deal with the cold or you happen to be in a place where it's, warm and you can do that. Or
Mhm.
just like read a book for an hour or something, right? But do something that is going to help recenter you and like take that breath from and stepping back from the craziness of the stresses of the food or the travel or whatever you're doing for that, kind of
Yeah.
that time period.
Yeah, I feel like this is the point. This is a little insert here to remember our fur babies and our furry friends, right? Our dogs, I don't know, cats maybe, probably getting fed by the cousins and the parents and all that other stuff. A little too much human food this time. Maybe a little extra milk, whatever the situation is. I mean, the stress that we carry in our house definitely translates to our other living animals and family members as well. And so why don't we take the dog on a little extra walk? Why don't we go ahead and spend some time playing with the cat toys or whatever, allowing them to run around a little bit, or putting on some calming, soothing music and having maybe a quiet hour where there isn't 16 children running around banging pots and pans and mom isn't over there throwing a fit about the baked goods coming out burnt or whatever, and
Right.
just really trying to think a little bit bigger than just ourselves because it makes a big difference. I promise if you're noticing a mood shifting about your house that you aren't the only one feeling that. And whether that mood is coming from you or another source, you have a potential opportunity there to kind of shift it. You just got to take some time and some space to acknowledge what's going on and to try to do something a little different. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think aside from fitness and food and everything for you, like what's the biggest holiday stressor that you find yourself dealing with?
Yeah. No, I think expectations, that's a really tough situation. Grief and loss and just remembering sort of the nostalgia of things, whether it's, oh, we used to do this as a kid and we don't do it anymore, or oh, this is my first Christmas without my grandmother, or whatever the situation is. Like, it's definitely an emotional time, and trying to save some space to feel what you're feeling and hopefully to be able to sort of express that or acknowledge that that's a huge challenge for me personally. You want to be connected. It's sort of a Hallmark movie moment for all of the stereotype of what the holidays are, and I feel like we sometimes really get caught or stuck in the potential of what this whole time could be like, and we miss out on the present moments, and we miss out on the magic of, just everyday things that are going on because we're in such strong pursuit of that, you know, perfect holiday picture together, or whatever it might be. And so I'm trying to really kind of stay grounded and centered around what's currently happening, what's present in my life, whether that's, I strongly feel the loss of so and so's family member, or I don't like being thousands of miles away from my parents, or whatever the thing is. I want to be able to acknowledge my emotions in that space, but not just sit in them. I want to be able to move forward and kind of celebrate forward with that. And that takes a lot of practice. I can't say I'm at a super great place with it, but I have some words to describe what that is. And I think that that in and of itself is growth.
Yeah, no, for sure. So you mentioned this is going to be the first time you're from your grandma, right?
Hmm. Yeah, so I've been seeing all these little ceramic Christmas trees. Maybe you know what I'm talking about. It's either green or it's white, and they're like ceramic. And they have
Right.
these little plastic or maybe glass bulbs that stick out. I see a whole new version of this stuff at like Walgreens or whatever. My grandma was like the OG who used to have that little, it's like a, it sits on the end table and it gets lit up or whatever. I don't know that she really loved the idea of pine trees in her house or whatever the reason was.
Right.
Product of the 70s, I'm sure. And so I remember seeing those come back out on the shelf sometime around Thanksgiving, and I who starts crying at a newspaper ad, right? I was like, oh,
Right.
there's my grandma right there. So you just got to kind of, especially for the people around you who might be witnessing you kind of going through the ups and downs of some of the things you're realizing, especially in that first year if you've lost someone, or if you've gone through any major transition in your life. I mean, you may have been really strongly attached to a holiday celebration at your previous place of employment, and you feel some type of way about the fact that you no longer get to celebrate in that fashion because you've moved on to a new opportunity or something. That's okay. What's not okay is trying to like stifle that and push that down and then watch it reappear in some other type of form. I think that's where we start to get into a little bit of trouble. There's ways we can celebrate the people who we've lost or the places that we've moved past, without it being to such a detriment. And, practice makes perfect in that regard. I think that there's no real wrong answer in that. I just think we get really uncomfortable when we veer from what we think of the holidays and the potential of what it could be, short-sighted to the point that the present is great just the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's important what you just said about how you allow yourself to feel. Just like you give yourself permission and to fall to the excuses for certain things because it's the holidays, you have to give yourself permission to feel. Especially if this is the first time, or you're, if folks are still struggling with the loss of a family member or a loved one, or a pet, even, right? For some people, this is maybe they lost a pet at this time frame, or maybe something's changed about your family, and the holidays just doesn't feel the same because of a divorce or a fight or something that's happened, right? And recognizing those feelings and allowing yourself to feel whatever you're going to feel is super important for you to name it. We talk about naming all the time, and it's such an important skill to have, is naming that emotion, kind of allowing yourself to deal with it, not to the point necessarily where you're going to allow it to completely control everything, but being able to
Right.
take a step back and look at it objectively and like, okay, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? What do I need in this moment? And how can, what can I do to get better? Like, what's the next step to get
Mhm.
better? And sometimes it's going to work, sometimes it's not. And you got to forgive yourself when it doesn't, because it's okay.
Right.
But don't bury it, and don't not recognize it, because what ends up happening is it ends up manifesting in some other way. Like, all of a sudden you're screaming at everybody, or you're screaming at the kids because they're banging the pots and pans, right? Or, the dog, something happened with the dog and you're going to scream at the dog. And really, when you think about it, every time you get mad or frustrated or something with somebody else, it's really probably about something that's happening with you. So live in the moment, live in the feeling, allow yourself to recognize that and honor it, but also don't let it mess up the goodness of what's happening right now in that moment. Because the reality is, we all have shit going on. We all have bad stuff that we don't necessarily want to happen. But for the most part, like when you really think about it, for the most part, you're okay, right? If you got a roof on
Mhm.
your head and if you got food on the table, you're probably doing better than like 90% of the world right now, right? Like there's some people in some really rough spots. So like, try to live in the fact like you're probably doing okay. Yes, it may not be ideal or perfect, but in that moment right then and there, you're probably okay.
Mhm. Well, and I was thinking about this too because let's say in a perfect world scenario, I have my shit together, right? Like my face is fine, my emotions are in check. I, for the most part, have got my ducks in a row. That's great. Then comes that one cousin who always likes to start shit, or that
Yeah.
racist leaning uncle who just can't give up the fact that you're in an interracial relationship or something, right? Like
Right.
there's a lot of stress involved with sort of managing and micromanaging expectations. And I was reading something today that really kind of got to that point because, um, and you sort of mentioned it too just a few minutes ago, but you were speaking to it in terms of self. And I would like to flip it on its head and say, when somebody comes at you, just like you said, when you're expressing something, anger or frustration or whatnot, it usually doesn't necessarily have to do with the kids or the dog or whatever. It usually has something to do with you. Well, fun fact, that's the same thing for what's being thrown your way,
Yep.
right? So
Absolutely.
whatever in their world comes back at you tenfold. And I think I have struggled in the past, definitely, um, for, we could talk about boundaries, we could talk about communication tactics, things like that. But on kind of the warm, fuzzy side of this whole part, it's important for me to see that person, somebody who is my loved one, who is on my inner circle in some way, shape, or form. I need to recognize their intention, right? Don't play into the worst case scenario of it all. Don't get into the banter around politics. I mean, do what you want to do, but I'm just going to highly advise that perhaps it's not worth your mental sanity to do that. Whose
Right.
mind are you changing on Facebook? Whose mind are you changing at the dinner table, right? Like really, truly. There are probably better ways to do that. So when somebody offends you or insults you or gets you on edge, starts really pushing those buttons, I think, some of the strategy that I was reading about today is that you look at that loved one or you listen to what that loved one is saying, up into a certain point, of course, but recognize their intention because their intention is probably fairly aligned with what you would like to receive from them. But then you need to redirect your reaction, right? So,
Right.
like, if some Joe Schmo on the street was talking like X, Y, and Z, on any given day, I might give it right back to him, right? But I'm going to guess that over, the mashed potatoes and gravy with everybody at the table, that's not going to be the best case, especially for the next 6 hours of football and all that other stuff coming up. I'm going to have to like share this space with you, hopefully in peace. So let me recognize your intention in calling my kids whatever you said, or calling my spouse or significant other something else, or trying to talk to me about my finances or whatever. I'm going to go ahead and recognize that your intention was probably, best case scenario. And I'm going to go ahead and do the really, really, really hard self work of redirecting my reaction so that maybe, if you're feeling pretty great about it all, you can sort of live by example or model the way. But at the very least, you're avoiding all of the landmines and catastrophe that could possibly be there.
Right.
Um, because I think we get really caught up in trying to like point fingers and prove points and who's the loudest and who has, all of their statistics on deck and who's ready to, really dig into the nitty-gritty of it all. And in truth, you all are there for family, for love, for celebration. So recognize that intention and see what you can do to wiggle out of that immediate hot spot, because I swear it's not worth it. It's not going to be worth it to really get into it.
Right. Yeah. So I think we've talked about Brene Brown before on this show, and I think both of us, I think, love her because she's awesome. But she has this whole idea of people are doing the best that they can, and
Yeah.
if you can get in that mindset, like, when I first heard her say that, and she really framed it as a question, do you think people are doing the best that they can? And my first reaction to that is like, no, fuck no, right? Like, people aren't doing the best that they can, and you can think of like all kind of people like, they can do better. Okay. But if you kind of peel it back and if you go in with the assumption, like, no matter what this person's doing, saying whatever, they're doing it the best that they can. Then all of a
Right.
sudden that kind of tells you like, maybe the intentions aren't bad. Maybe they just, if and it's just don't know better or whatever. But they're doing the best that they can, and you can kind of start looking at it from a more empathetic standpoint. Doesn't mean it's okay for them that racist uncle to say all these racist things, or doesn't mean you can't set the boundaries properly. But I think
Right.
if you believe that the person's doing the best that they can, then maybe setting that boundary is going to be a little bit easier. It's like, okay, they just cannot do what I'm asking them to do, and they're doing it the best that they can. That means I need to figure out how not to be part of this relationship anymore, or I can love them from afar, or whatever it takes. But it helps you set that boundary and helps you think about it a little bit more empathetically.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. I think one of the ways that we kind of I've in the past, and I would suggest to our listeners, one of the most powerful things, especially in this call in, call out culture that we're in, right? We have this tendency to be able to say, this, you cross this line, you're canceled, right? Like, no, okay. Well, if only sometimes we wish that could be the case with family. But I think one of the things that we can model in a real selfless type of way is acknowledging our own blind spots
Yep.
and giving sort of credence to the growing pains that maybe you personally or individually have gone through on said topic or whatnot. Or in retrospect, I guess, maybe something that you are stumbling on or kind of mishandling at this current, chapter of your life that you thought you had on lock, but really in truth, you're really kind of struggling with it now. And so a really great example of this for me was I went to a tree lighting ceremony. I think it was last week, and it was a community-based tree lighting ceremony, in like town square type of thing. And it was a family-friendly event, which is, kind of the tone of everything this time of year. And so, I was excited to see there was a little like Whoville set up for the Grinch. And, stereotypically, of course, there was a sleigh and some reindeer. So we knew Santa was going to be around or whatever. And it was a Christmas tree. Okay, cool. As much as I love in my hippy dippy heart for it to be incredibly pagan leaning, it wasn't necessarily about the changing of the seasons and all that other stuff, but okay, commercial Christmas being what it is, it wasn't that big of a surprise to me. But as I was standing there for about 10 minutes until the program started, I started feeling this cynicism just boiling inside of me. And I'm just getting more like bothered by the fact that all the Christmas carols that were being sung by this community choir were very, very Christian leading. Hark
Right.
the herald angels sing, and little Jesus in the manger and all this other stuff. And I'm like, why are we like just painting this broad brush of like Christian only at this community event? And I'm finding myself in some of my like politics just boiling over into my like ether. And I was like, I need to take a walk and get myself a little hot cocoa real quick, because I'm standing in your young ears and all these families who are trying to have a great time. And why am I so bothered by it? Right. And so I really had to take myself to church in that regard and say, okay, you know what? Like Christmas in general is a Christian holiday. First of all, Kim, why are you upset?
Right.
Secondly, what are you and or what could you be doing with this energy here? And so that really kind of took myself to task on that, to say, hey, when I have an opportunity to speak on the holidays or to share something on social media about the holidays, make sure you do your damn due diligence to expose what you feel like could be maybe a better balance in that regard. Make sure that you're saving space wherever somebody is celebrating or talking about the holidays to acknowledge maybe a holiday that isn't so familiar or near and dear to your heart. And so there's nothing wrong with this community event highlighting all sorts of different things going on. And the fact that this was a little bit of a trigger point for you speaks a lot more to you and where you're at in your spiritual processes than it does about anything else. And so, taking a few steps back and standing next to that wood burning fire and, smelling all of that and drinking the hot cocoa really got me to calm down a little bit and be able to really enjoy the tree lighting and moving forward. But that was one of those things where I was like, I need to acknowledge, kind of my blind spot, and I need to kind of redirect my reaction on something that really isn't meant to be so heavy and so strong, but that there is probably still some purpose to that,
Right.
and finding a way to kind of rubber meets the road on that purpose, do something about it.
Well, I think the fact that you even recognize that something was happening is good, right? Like you're conscious about it, right? And that's awesome, because I think 90% of 99% of people don't even recognize something's happening. Next thing you know, they're angry and cursing out the whole event, right? I think the other piece, though, if you really kind of want to cut down to it, it's like, if you didn't like the event, why are you there?
Right.
You know,
That's another huge part.
yeah, I mean, and that's fine. And leaving is okay. And I think that's where we get caught up. And so and I'll segue a little bit into it's one of the things I struggle with a lot is obligations, right? Obligations to go here and there and to like be at certain families places at certain
Mhm.
days or friends or whatever, because this is what we always do. And then it goes back to like, if you really don't want to be there and you're not happy there, don't fucking go.
Right.
Right?
You
Like,
are an adult.
yeah,
Most of the time, you have a chance to choose what you're spending your energy and time and likely money on this time of year. Let's be honest. That obligation piece is huge, Carlos. Like I promise you, all of our listeners have a thread of that obligation involved. Like how many Thanksgivings did you all go to, right? Like how many full-fledged 8-course meals are we going to attend, right? Like seriously.
yeah. And
I
so,
think
and here's the thing, like, I know people hearing this are like, sure, I can't go to my mom's house, even though and I'm not saying this about so to be clear, my mom listens to the show, and I'm not saying this about this mom, but I'm saying people may want to go to their mom's house or their in-laws house or have to go because out of obligation, and they hate it, right? They hate being there. And what I'm saying is, you don't fucking have to go. You can say
right.
no. You can give yourself permission to say no. You can give yourself permission that says, Carlos told me I didn't have to go, and you can tell your mom that, and I'll be okay with it if she yells at me and sends me a strongly worded email. Like, that's the point, is when it comes to obligations, if you genuinely do not want to be there, or it genuinely does not make you happy, or it isn't adding to your happiness, or if it's a toxic relationship, it is okay to say no. That could be a boundary you set. And you don't have to justify, regardless of what people made you feel or what you think, you do not have to justify that to anybody. Now, if you want to offer an explanation, if you want to have that conversation as to why you don't want to be there or how it makes you feel or whatever, I would encourage you to do so, because you will feel 1,000 times better after you get off that off your chest. But at the end of the day, you literally don't have to do the things that you don't want to do. Now, that being said, recognize why you're really not doing it. Recognize if there's something deeper with you. Is it something deeper with them? What are the underlying things that you're feeling, and deal with those feelings, because that's where the true kind of freedom comes from. It's like, let me really understand why I don't want to go there, or why I don't want to be there, or why I don't want to be around these people, or whatever it is. Why don't
Yeah.
I want to have this obligation anymore? And if you can get down to that, then you can get it, giving yourself permission to not do things and to say no makes it that much easier.
Absolutely. And as you were kind of explaining that, I'm looking through some of my notes I had written in prep for the show too. And one of the things I underlined twice before you even started talking was this concept of the pressure to please, whether
Yeah.
that's to please kids by buying that, Tickle Me Elmo was the biggest deal when I was like a little bit younger. Perhaps
Yeah.
we all remember. I have no idea what it is today, but the pressure to please people, your in-laws, your wife, your kids, your dog, whatever, like your employer. Oh, I got to work all the way through Christmas Eve and oh man, thank goodness I am out of retail and customer service at this time, because please, please, please have patience for those folks in your life. They are working, but they are also human. Like, come on now, the pressure to please is such a driving factor in that whole chapter on obligation, at least for me. I'm sure for a lot of other folks too. But to your point exactly, if you're going to take some time to analyze kind of the why behind all of that, to give yourself the space to say no, then by all means, that's definitely worthy work to do, especially this time of year.
Yeah,
Um,
that just reminded me too. I had a conversation with a friend, I think last week, around Christmas presents, and she has a pretty big family, and they have a tradition that they buy presents for all the kids and all the adults, and she's like, I'm having a hard time being able to afford all this and all this other stuff, and I can see the stress in her eyes, because obviously there's a big financial burden with the holidays, and I'm like, why don't you fucking tell them no? Like, just say, I
right.
can't do this year. Like, I just can't afford to do this. And she was kind of, we were going a little bit back and forth on why it was hard for her to be able to do that, and that goes back to obligations and expectations and everything. And then I'm just like, that is a whole thing. Like, that is a stressor that you have that is literally in your control. You can say
Right.
no, or you can say, look, I can only buy presents for the kids, and each kid only gets a certain amount of money, or like whatever was going to work for your budget. But that is completely and 100% within your control. And if you let the
Totally.
obligations and the expectations around that get to you, then that's where the additional stressors come in. And if you follow that thread down, then all of a sudden it leads to resentment, because you
Mm-hmm.
didn't say no, now you're obligated to do it. Now all of a sudden you're resenting what happened, and you're going to resent that credit card bill in January, and it's like
You
that
will.
continues to be the cycle that people run into. And again, finance is just one example, but you can kind of trace that same path. Everything leads to resentment, which obviously is going to mess up your own happiness.
Absolutely. Another thing in regards to obligation, just one last thing on that. I feel like, we take all this time in the world, most of us do, to plan, right? We're planning on this party and this event and this house on that day and, these sort of things happening in the next 2 weeks or whatever. I think it's very, very, very important with all of the hustle and bustle of things that are going on that you take time to plan downtime. Make sure that
Yeah.
you plan a quiet hour every day, or every 6 hours you have 30 minutes where your phone is off, your laptop is off, you are not on anybody's on call list, you get to shower in peace, whatever it is that you
Yeah.
need to do. Make sure that you plan some downtime for yourself, because if you don't, just endurance wise, you're going to get, you're going to get burnt out, you're going to get run down, it's flu season, there's all sorts of health concerns and all that stuff. You're outside in malls and on carousels and in bouncy houses with your kids and all this other stuff. Germs are everywhere. That's disgusting.
Yeah.
Like, just, you gotta take care of yourself. I think if you could, if in a perfect world we all could add an extra 30 minutes to our alarm clock every day, we would all be in a much better place. Just make sure to prioritize that downtime, because otherwise the world and everything going on right now is going to keep you busy. Like, it's going to keep you going. Late nights, which mean we're eating later, alcoholic beverages, which means, we're imbibing a little bit more,
Yeah.
and all of that stuff the wheels start to fall off the wagon very, very fast.
Absolutely. So kind of because we're kind of getting up in a little bit of the time here as far as the show goes. So kind of flipping it on its axis a little bit, and let's talk about some more like good things. What is the one thing you look most forward to during the holidays?
Oh, for me, I mean, I do really like the twinkly lights and all that kind of stuff, right? I really like the glow of Christmas. I think that if you give yourself the space and you've kind of set all things up to be fairly ideal and perfect, you are noticing little moments in the everyday that sort of hit on that hallmark high. It's like, we ate 3 homemade meals this week, and I haven't seen you smile as you watched your kids fall asleep like that in years, or whatever the thing is, right?
Right.
And I think that that's those moments right there are the ones that you want to like kind of stop time for. And I so much enjoy, for me, I love the outdoors. I like seeing, the seasons change and, the first snowfall and all of that kind of stuff. Just kind of everything slowing down. You want to kind of cuddle a little longer and stay warmer and all that kind of stuff. I love that part about the holidays, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm in the same boat. Being a father, that like just my kids, right? It's like the excitement
Yeah.
of my kids, and even though they're starting to get a little bit older and everything, but they still get super excited about the holidays and Christmas and everything. The problem now is they're getting a little bit older, got to worry about entitlement and them getting always what they want, right? That's a different problem, but just the excitement around that and seeing that, and I think I agree with you. Things kind of slow down to the peace of
Mhm.
that, like mostly leading up into Christmas and like Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, once all the craziness stops and you can just sit down and just stare at the Christmas tree, right, and just
Yeah.
absorb the lights and just a little bit, it's always in the dark, but it's kind of lit up in the room and everything, and just kind of sitting there and kind of being in that moment, being present in that moment, and just being grateful for the goodness in your life and the goodness of what you have, regardless of how many challenges you have. Like, you just focus and just be super grateful about the good things that are actually happening, and uh, how lucky you really are to have the things that you do. So that's definitely my favorite part.
There's like something special. I mean, I'm definitely the type of person who's not trying to turn on the radio to Christmas music before Thanksgiving is over or anything like that. But
Right.
I love the community feel of, you're humming along or singing along in the cereal aisle to the Christmas songs, right? You hear the old ladies at church really turning it up a notch on some of their favorite, hymns or whatever's going on. Like, I really like the music and the shared experience that kind of comes with us all kind of knowing those tunes, those timeless tunes, and or hearing new versions of those old songs too. I really think music has a certain kind of magic this time of year as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. There's definitely some Christmas carols that get the tears flowing a little bit more because they just, so powerful around that.
Yeah.
So, okay, great. So, just want to remind everybody to take a look at our website. That's stormchamp.com. You will see links to all of our podcasts, all of our social media. Make sure you check us out on YouTube. We just published a really good episode with somebody who was dealing with a couple of suicide attempts, and so make sure you take a listen to some of that backlog. Appreciate everybody. I think this is gonna be the last one we get out before Christmas, so definitely want to wish everybody a happy holiday. Hope everything goes well for you. Make sure you stay stress free. Make sure you're breathing. Make sure you're telling people no.
All the good stuff. Yes, all of that.
Absolutely. And Kim, as always, it's been a great year. We're gonna have a wrap up episode right before New Year's of kind of where the podcast is at and hopefully where we're going in the future, and talk a little bit about resolutions and how to think differently a little bit about resolutions. So that's definitely an upcoming episode right before New Year's. So looking forward to talking to you about that.
Absolutely. All right, Carlos, hug those babies for me and enjoy your holiday if I don't talk to you before then. All right.
Absolutely. You too. Merry Christmas.
All right.
All right. See ya.
Bye.